So, here's a question I bet you've heard 1,000 times. Are you a logical left brain person or a creative right brain person? It's one of those classic personality questions, right? A super simple way we try to categorize ourselves. But what if this entire idea, this really neat and tidy division, is actually built on a huge misunderstanding of how our brains really work?
Okay, let's set the scene. Picture this. You're at some creativity workshop, and the instructor gets up and says something like, "All right, everyone, today we're going to unlock our right brain." You've heard that before, right? It's a classic line, and it's pretty much ground zero for this massive popular myth.
And then you hear this. You can almost feel the collective sigh of relief in the room. It's like, oh, phew, so that's why I can't draw. It's not that I'm not trying, it's just, my wiring. It's such a common excuse because it feels so simple and it lets us off the hook.
And this right here, this is the pop psychology version of our brain, all neatly packaged into two different columns. On one side, you've got the left hemisphere. It's our inner accountant, right? All logic, analysis, and cold hard numbers. And on the other side, the right hemisphere, the free-spirited artist, full of intuition, creativity, and big emotions. It's clean, it's simple, and honestly, it's a very appealing story.
But it's that very simplicity that makes it so wrong. See, according to actual neuroscientists, this neat little division is one of the biggest myths in popular psychology. Your brain isn't some divided house with a wall down the middle. It's way more like a bustling city, a deeply interconnected network where information is constantly zipping between both sides.
So if it's a myth, why is it so sticky? Why does everyone seem to believe it? Well, like all the best myths, it's not a total lie. It's actually rooted in a really fascinating tiny little grain of scientific truth that just got, stretched way out of proportion. That grain of truth has a name. It's called hemispheric specialization. And it's true, certain jobs in the brain are more dominant in one hemisphere. For most of us, the left side is the star player when it comes to processing language and grammar. And meanwhile, the right side tends to be better at things like recognizing faces or picking up on the emotional tone in someone's voice. But here is the absolute key takeaway. Just because different neighborhoods in a city have their own specialties, a financial district here, an arts district over there, that doesn't mean they operate on their own. Specialization is absolutely not the same thing as separation.
So this brings us to a much more accurate picture of the brain, a unified brain, not a divided one. And to really get that, you need to meet the unsung hero of your own mind.
Let me introduce you to the corpus callosum. Seriously, think of this thing as a super high-speed fiber optic cable that connects two massive data centers. Its entire job, 24/7, is to make sure the left and right hemispheres are in constant, seamless communication with each other.
And listen, this isn't just some flimsy little wire. We are talking about a structure made of hundreds of millions of nerve fibers. That's the sheer volume of information that's zipping back and forth between the two sides of your brain every single second of every single day.
And we can see this in action. Brain scans or neuroimaging studies totally confirm it. Pretty much any complex thing you do, whether it's solving a math problem or just listening to a friend tell a story, it lights up areas on both sides of your brain. When you listen to that story, your left hemisphere is crunching the words and the grammar, sure, but your right hemisphere is deciphering the emotional tone and all the stuff that's said between the lines. You need both to really get what's going on.
So how do we know for sure just how vital this connection is? Well, the most dramatic, and I mean really convincing evidence, comes from these incredible studies on patients whose corpus callosum had actually been surgically severed.
Okay, let's walk through this amazing experiment. So researchers would show an image, let's say a picture of a spoon, but only to the patient's right hemisphere. Now remember, the right hemisphere controls the left side of the body. So the patient could easily use their left hand to pick up the actual spoon, no problem. But here's the wild part. When the researcher asked them, "What did you see?" the patient would say, "I didn't see anything." Why? Because the language center, which is over in the left hemisphere, never got the message. It was completely in the dark about what the right hemisphere just saw.
And this is where it gets even stranger. The left brain, our inner narrator, sees the left hand holding a spoon, and because it needs to make sense of everything, it just makes up a reason. It might say something like, "Oh, I must have wanted to stir my coffee." This is a real phenomenon called confabulation. It's the brain's attempt to create a cohesive story, even when it's literally missing half the information. It's just powerful proof of how much the brain is driven to be one single unified system. So if the science is so clear on this, why do we still cling so tightly to the left brain, right brain myth? Well,
The answer lies in a really powerful cognitive bias, a little quirk in how our minds just love to organize the world.
It's called Dichotomania. It's basically our brain's obsession with simple, clean binaries. We have this deep, natural tendency to want to split these complex, messy realities into two neat, opposing teams. It just makes the world feel simpler and easier to understand.
And you see this impulse everywhere, right? We're always setting up these little battles. It's logic versus creativity, or science versus art, or reason versus emotion. The whole left brain, right brain myth fits perfectly into this pattern. It gives us a simple, easy label to slap on ourselves and everyone else.
So what does this all mean for you? Well, it means it's time to throw out these simple, limiting labels and embrace a much more powerful and, frankly, more accurate view of who you are.
Let's just completely shatter this false divide. The myth says scientists are purely logical. But the reality? Albert Einstein credited his biggest breakthroughs not just to crunching numbers, but to thought experiments, like visualizing himself riding on a beam of light. And on the flip side, the myth says artists are purely intuitive. But any great artist will tell you that art has deep structure, a kind of geometric language of form, composition, and theory. The greatest minds have never been one-sided.
So the big takeaway here is really simple. Just forget the labels. You don't have a dominant hemisphere that's running the show and deciding your fate. You have one amazing, incredibly complex, and fully integrated brain.
And this really is the core idea. Our greatest abilities, whether we're talking about science or art or just solving a problem at work, they don't come from one side of the brain taking over. They emerge from the seamless collaboration, the beautiful harmony of all its different systems working together.
So I'm going to leave you with this thought. Instead of asking which side of yourself you should be using, what if you started asking a completely different question? What becomes possible when you finally unleash the full interconnected power of your entire brain?